But again, if we're going to suspend moral judgment, right? Because that's what Machiavelli is all about. Let's picture from the perspective of a prince, right? Or a king or whatever, which is the context that you would talk about Machiavelli in, right? Can you think of a context when you should absolutely lie to the populace? Type it in chat. Is there any context where you would think the king has to lie to the people? Like it is the only rational choice. So, my friend, Mr. Ben. Okay, so you're curious about Machiavelli, huh? Let's be clear. I ain't a Machiavelli scholar, okay? So take what I say with a grain of salt. But I'm assuming what you are referring to is the difference between the factual truth, like the reality of situations, and the effective truth, right? Is it effective or effectual? How do they put it? Yeah, effectual truth. That's right. Yeah, I mean, okay, so if we're talking in those terms, holy shit. Okay, the effectual truth is basically, from what I remember, the truth that is the most convenient to your goals, right? The truth that gets the result you intend for it to get, right? So the reason I would assume it's called the effectual truth is because the effect of telling this truth causes a result that might actually align, what you're saying with reality. But yeah, okay, so here's the thing, right? Here's the thing that Machiavelli understood better than the vast majority of fucking people, for sure, but even leaders. If you have ever been a leader of people, okay, and this is a big if, because if you haven't, this is probably going to sound fucking strange. Okay. But if you've ever been a leader of people in any capacity, whether it be, older brother, or if you have kids, or if you're just literally the camp counselor, all this shit, it is very expedient to lie. In fact, being honest, telling the true truth, the whole truth, okay? The actual, full picture truth is rarely the most effective, efficient, or even desirable course of action, okay? Now, that is not me saying that it is better to lie, okay? I'm not making a moral judgment, but when you're a kid, okay, when your kid basically when your kid is like having teeth fall out and shit, okay, why the fuck do we why do we lie and say that there's a tooth fairy? Why does that happen? Well, I think in my head, the answer is because losing a tooth is actually kind of a scary fucking thing for a kid to endure, and a weird thing. And so by making it exciting, by being like, wow, you're gonna get a visit from the tooth fairy now, it is a way for the kid to not freak the fuck out and think that something's wrong because their tooth is falling out. That's real as shit from a perspective in the army. Yeah, here's the thing, man. When you're combining not telling the truth as a leader with mass death, effective, efficient, but holy fuck, is that sinister. But again, if we're going to suspend moral judgment, right? Because that's what Machiavelli is all about. Let's picture from the perspective of a prince, right? Or a king or whatever, which is the context that you would talk about Machiavelli in, right? Can you think of a context? Just type it in chat. Can you think of a context when you should absolutely lie to the populace? Type it in chat. Is there any context where you would think the king has to lie to the people? Like it is the only rational choice, you know? Wow, a stranger's gonna sneak into your room and buy that tooth off of you in your sleep, bud. Anyway, sweet dreams. Okay, fair. Fuck you, Oxpecker. An incentive to take good care of your teeth since they do fall out and get paid for your teeth to keep old kiddo calm and not think you're Yeah, thank you, Slumsy. Just sit down sometime and consider telling all the people you love the whole. Nah, the truth will always come out. Okay, dank Joshly. Come on. There has to be a context where you can think in your head, the king cannot be honest in this. He cannot do this. The tooth fairy molested me. I'm sorry about that, Saskia. I think the tooth fairy represents an authority figure that gives the child... Okay, interesting. Damn, nobody... JP said that if you don't tell the truth, at least don't lie, you know? Okay, but bro, you can lie by omission. That's entirely what I'm basically saying. You don't have to lie to the populace. Consider telling the people you love the whole truth with nothing left to thought. How you really have it in your mind. That episode of Rick and Morty with that Jellybean King who died. Mr. Jellybean, dude. My mom knows what Mentos and Coke is. Consider telling the people you love the whole truth with nothing left to thought. How you really have it in your mind. That's not probably the best advice, but let me put it like this. How do I make this fucking digestible? This is a big question to ask, okay, Mr. Ben? I appreciate the contribution, but I'm also trying to appreciate the question. So it's a bit tough. Allegedly, the U.S. military would fly Black Hawk helicopters to shoot and kill uncooperative farmers' cows to test for mad cow disease. Damn. Then we're just talking about lying of omission. Okay. Let me tell you a context where the king should lie to his people. Here's the situation. What is the role of the king? Believe it or not, whether you are aware of this or not aware of this, the actual role of the king historically has literally been to act in the best interest of the elite. Okay? And to make sure, basically, that the peasants, or, the proletariat, whatever you would say, are satisfied. Okay? This is the role of the king, historically. Guess what? It's also the role of the government, historically. They manage class relationships, meaning, the lower classes and the higher classes. They manage the relationship between these two on behalf of the higher classes, okay? What does that mean? It's pretty fucking obvious. The higher classes always get the better end of the fucking stick, okay? They are who the king, the government, are operating to protect and to serve the interests of, all right? But you need to be aware that the lower classes have to be treated well enough, basically, or, managed effectively to the point where they will not fucking revolt and threaten the interests of the elite, okay? What does this mean? It means that sometimes the king or the government will actually hurt the elite, but with the long-term, intention of actually doing what's best for the elite, okay? So, if the king is too obvious about that, if the king were to go in public and say, yeah, guess what? My job is to make sure that you guys stay peasants and for me to continue serving these elites. Okay, if the president were to go up and be like, yeah, guess what? We're gonna go to war. Many of you are gonna die. Well, many of you brokies, of course. And guess what? We're gonna go to war to secure the long-term interests of our elite. What do you think would happen? The vast majority of wars throughout history were started on the basis of the elite class, okay, seeking new opportunity, seeking basically to secure new assets, okay? What does that mean? I mean, it's pretty fucking obvious. The people who end up actually fighting these wars, they aren't actually, the people who will directly benefit in most cases from the boon of whatever, territory gets conquered, right? And so what happens if you're too honest about that as a leader? Mutiny? Yeah. You get fucking shot in the head? Probably. Your empire crumbles. Your legacy diminished, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, but our dumbest warriors are the most sacrificial of our members. Okay, I don't know what that means. I think the reaction is what happened during the Vietnam War. Far more of a target. Yeah, exactly. So you guys get it. This is why, okay, politicians, kings, but especially politicians nowadays, because here's what you need to understand, right? Machiavelli, he was thinking in a time when there was such a degree of separation between a king, a ruler, or whatever, a prince, and the people that this prince rules over, right? There really was a big amount of separation. Okay. Nowadays, our leaders appear on camera. Every person in the country has the opportunity to listen to what they are saying. It's not just hearsay. You can't just have a good speech in front of 500 people and then those 500 people report what you said and it's like kind of just spread. Like, you can literally see the fucking president shitting his pants live on TV. You understand? And so, of course, bro, we have a nonstop flow of politicians telling us effective or effectual truths in order to secure not only their position, okay? Because yes, it is partially to secure their own position as individuals, but also to secure and ensure the security of the elite class, okay? Now, here's a more interesting kind of thing to keep in mind, okay? When would it be desirable for a leader, a king, whatever, to lie to the elite? Because of course they lie to the fucking peasants, bro. Of course, because guess what? Unfortunately, the peasants, or whatever you would say, like the lower classes, even though they're being lied to, individually they really do not have much power, right? And so, as long as, most people believe the lies, those, peasants who don't believe the lies, they don't really have much that they can do. But when you're lying to the fucking elite, when you're lying to, like, high up advisors or people who own fucking businesses and who can hire military, we're talking historical, of course. Machiavelli's time, right? Because of course there was mercenaries back then too, right? When would it be appropriate for you to lie to these people who could fuck your shit up? A lot of coming into power is making friends with the power that is, and then a relationship you make with them, choosing sides within the divide of the elite. It may be necessary to lie in order to do so. Yeah, well, okay, so let me put it like this. Okay, there's a certain organization that exists within America, but it echoes a similar kind of vibe to the Praetorian Guard in Rome, okay? Now, for those who don't know, the Praetorian Guard in Rome was basically the elite, protector of the domestic leaders of Rome, whatever. And guess what? Sometimes they killed emperors. Okay? Sometimes they decided what was best for Rome or themselves. It was very corrupt, obviously. And so if you're a leader and you have an organization within your government that is super antagonistic to your goals, and this organization within government might or might not have a history of killing past leaders who don't fall in line, well, of course you should lie and fucking pretend like you're going with the, the flow of this fucking organization, right? Oh, fuck. Or maybe you should just do what they say. Maybe just do what the fuck they say, but then you're not a leader. You're not really a leader at that point, are you? Maybe. War endures because young men love it and old men love it in them. Those that fought, those that did not. Interesting. Dude, war endures because of fucking interests, bro. In most cases of power, it is decentralized, and the game of politics is inherent to forming a majority of power within that elite to see through what you see moral, which itself is subject to fallacy. Okay. Just crazy that we live in abundance, but millions are going to bed starving. Yeah. Okay. Ugh. I'm doing a bad job of bringing this to coherence. I think, at least. Let me try it again. Have you read Spring Snow? No. I'm too drunk to comment. Okay, fucking Cam. Well, thanks for commenting anyway, bro. Let's watch a video on Machiavelli's two truths. Damn. All of these are like pop bullshit, dude. Okay, here's one way that kings have lied throughout history, okay, to much success. Divine right. You ever heard of this? The divine right of kings. The idea that a throne, a leadership position, a crown, the wearer of that crown was anointed by God. It's divine, the decision for them to be the leader. They are a demigod in a sense. The leader is not just an elite. They are a fucking servant of God. You understand? If you were a leader, and the expectation of the time is to say, well, God chose me. Of course my decisions are coherent and are the best for us because it's God's will. If you're living in a time when that's the expectation, picture this. You go up, you announce proudly to everybody, you've just become king at the ripe age of 20. Because there's been 20-year-old kings, believe it or not. And you go up and you say, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. God's not telling me what to do. I don't think I'm qualified for this position. What's gonna happen, dude? Everyone will be like, hey man, I understand, first day on the job, it'll all be good. We'll give you some time to work out the kinks. No, you're instantly going to get a fucking massive amount of factions fighting for power, and basically you're going to get nuked. You're going to get fucked in the ass, dude. You're going to get destroyed. So yeah, this divine right of kings. The historical expectation, and dude, it's still the fucking case, although again, because of what I was talking about, which is that now the saying is that the emperor has no clothes, right? Nowadays, what does that mean? Nowadays, we have so little myth, we have so little illusion, right? Because there was very little There's very little separation of powers today from a perceptive angle, okay? There's massive separations in terms of how, the elite versus the peasants actually live today. Like fucking Jeff Bezos and his mega yacht, you know what I mean? Or Mark Zuckerberg and his fucking island that he bought somewhere. Like, this is insane fucking disparaging of wealth compared to us brokies or whatever the fuck, right? But we can see the yacht. We can see the fucking island. You understand? We can perceive. Like, there's not this massive separation between perceiving how fucking much more fortunate, the average billionaire is, okay? And, again, we're not just, like, hearing stories about, President Biden or President Trump or whatever. We're not just hearing stories about these guys through word of mouth or through reading a newspaper or seeing an image, right? We can literally see their fucking faces as they shit their pants. You understand? The second they have an awkward moment, 500,000 people see it. You know? So that's what's meant by the emperor has no clothes. There is no longer that mystique, mysteriousness. Whoa, what is going on in that castle? They must be doing so much work. No, in reality, we kind of, and again, some people still think this, right? Like, for sure, some people still think that, you know, someone like Joe Biden or Trump or whatever are kind of actually, you know, very high level involvement in actually like all the decisions being made, whatever. No, most of us, at least if you're watching this, probably you're aware that, like, okay, Joe Biden's a fucking puppet. He has all these advisors that are actually making decisions. More or less the same with Trump, maybe a little bit less, but whatever. The point is, okay, back in the day, you don't see the fucking king ever. And the one context where you might see the king is when he is addressing his people from his fucking castle, giving some vague speech, right? And so, yeah, of course, these leaders heavily leaned into the concept that they were chosen by God. And some of them definitely believed that they were actually chosen by God, but a lot of them definitely didn't. Okay? But they still understand. If they think that God is acting through me, they will trust me. Much more blindly. And so, yes, a lot of atrocities, okay? A lot of fuck ups, a lot of tragedies have been kind of dismissed historically by preaching, you know, a religious backing, right? Obviously, the Crusades are kind of, you know, the quintessential fucking example to an extent. You know, you're fighting for God. This is God's holy mission, whatever. But to a lesser extent, right? Like the idea of, you know, people being basically punished based on the law, right? And the law is perceived as like God's will. Do you understand? Like, isn't that a funny little angle? If you break the law, you are a sinner. Who decides the law? Well, the fucking king, the elite, whatever you would say. Funny how that works. And so, of course, you know, by associating sin with breaking the law, by moralizing disobedience, whatever, you are going to inject a healthy dose of slave morality into your fucking people. What does this mean? It's a Nietzschean concept, but basically it's the idea of, I am not a sinner. I am going to sit back and accept all the hardship in my life, even though my life sucks fucking balls. I'm just going to put up with it. You know why? Because I'm going to heaven when I die. And those elites, those degenerates, anybody who's, you know, abusing their power or fucking with my life or the people I love, I don't need to seek out justice, punishment, etc. in this life, because they'll get that when they die and they burn in hell for eternity. You know? So basically that's like a cope that basically allows nothing to fucking change. You know what I mean? The fuck? McGregors were legally allowed to be hunted with dogs, no matter the person, for 200 years in England. Are we talking about literal McGregors? Like, this is just like an anti-Ireland thing? Or is it where we talk about like Conor McGregor's? I'm just kidding. At least back in the day, there was a good chance everyone involved genuinely believed in divine mandates and holy visions and shit. Now people worship rich people just because it's so sad. Yeah, that's kind of true, Cybulus. That's kind of true. Um, Here's something interesting, okay, about leadership or whatever you would say. This might sound kind of Machiavellian to you. Ben, I don't know if you're still watching, but if you are, my friend, thank you again for all the donations, okay? I will cap off this Machiavelli conversation with this. Why do you think, serious question, why do you think we stopped doing public executions? Why? Why not, dude? It was so much fun. Well, the answer is pretty simple. When you kill someone in public, a lot can go wrong. A lot. Okay? They could be a martyr if they die for a cause that, people resonate with, especially, the peasants or whatever, lower classes. You can fuck it up. Like, the rope could snap and they survive, and then you look extra cruel when you make them fucking drop again, It's a risk, bro. It's a risk. And so, you tell me, over time, have we gotten more empathetic? Have we gotten more empathetic to criminals? Probably, yeah. Probably. But the transition from public to private executions has nothing to do with, respecting human life or whatever. It has everything to do with hiding or like obscuring or mystifying state mandated murder. You know what I mean? State authorized murder. Do you understand? When you don't see it, okay? When it's out of sight, it's out of fucking mind. Would you consider that lying to your people to not allow them to see, publicly funded facilities or whatever murder people? I don't know. Another reason why, death sentences, I think, historically have ended up getting less harsh is because they started getting carried out against the elite sometimes in situations of revolution. So if you look at the French Revolution, right? Well, suddenly you have kings and queens being guillotined, their heads rolling on the fucking wood. And so that definitely makes, the vibe of public executions a lot less enticing to the global elite, Green dots on the door? The fuck are you talking about? Oh, bro, that's literally just this image. Yo, you want to see what this image is, bro? Watch this shit. This image I have over the chat. One sec. Watch this shit, bro. Whoa. It's literally just a picture of my cat Shadow. My cat Shadow, pictured here in the dark with her laser beam eyes. Look at this crazy cat, dude. Whoa, crazy cat. Whoa, dude. Okay, that's enough. Anyway, I think we're getting to the point of the night where I'm having a hard time having coherent fucking trains of thought, but hopefully that conversation meant something to you. I mean, look, I don't think it's a good thing inherently for a fucking leader to lie to their subjects. But here's the thing, I'm not fully convinced that it's inherently a good thing for a leader to be honest with their subjects either. Okay? It doesn't mean I'm pro lying, bro, obviously. But it all depends exactly on what goals, this leader is trying to set forth. And yeah, the sad part is like as a leader, bro, you can't actually know that your moves, your decisions, your strategies will work. You can't actually, with 100% certainty, know that every move you make will be what's best for everyone. But the second you express any doubt, well, you've just crippled your chances even more, if that makes sense. Yeah, we'll keep the stream archived, Chris, but you have to join the Discord because that's where the archive exists. If you want to listen to past streams, you can find the archive in the Gokanaru Discord. Thank you again to everybody who donated tonight. Yeah, I'm going to now talk about the Sneeko shit. Lying is good as long as you aren't caught. That's kind of utilitarian of you. I think the perfect case study is Lelouch v. Britannia. Damn, Oxpecker, that's such facts, dude. That's like a high-level liar, dude. That's like a lie for the greater good, man. The bigger the group you're talking to, the likelier there will be bad actors who will use the truth to ruin shit. After a certain point, lying is just the safer option. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's expedient, efficient, effective. Yeah,